Hello and welcome to our third session in the SJP Speaker Series. I'm Rachel, owner of Wild Heart Farm, and I'm here along with my colleague Janine Cava from the New Jersey Food Democracy Collaborative. We have Emilio from the Urban Agriculture Cooperative to learn more about their work and running a nonprofit food hub. So just some quick details on the series. It is hosted by the South Jersey Farmers Equity and Sustainability Team, also called SJ Feast, which is led by the Pinelands Preservation Alliance and supported by the New Jersey Food Democracy Collaborative. So I'll just show our website really quick. It is here. So you can see in maybe Janine, you can put the link in the chat. Essentially, the project is created to expand market access and opportunities for South Jersey farmers. So doing that in a couple different ways, we've got the South Jersey Producer Survey open, which we are inviting to all South Jersey farmers in the area. We'll also be including that in our follow-up. And then, as I noted, we've got lots of different events in our speaker series right now upcoming. We've already had two, which we'll be posting the recordings of, and lots of upcoming as well listed here. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing. And yeah, before I pass on, I do want to share that, so I mentioned the survey, I mentioned that we are actually open to more farmers joining the SJ Feast group. So if you know of any South Jersey farmers or want to join yourself as you're watching this recording, please reach out to us. Jonathan at pinelandsalliance.org is the email used. We'll put that in the notes as well for this recording. And then one more opportunity that we wanted to share before I pass it off to Emilio is an exciting new opportunity from the Rutgers Cooperative Alliance. Here is the flyer. You can see this. So it is a multi-part field trip series designed to improve risk management for farmers and resource sharing and connecting farmers to each other. And coincidentally, the first field trip is actually at Urban Agriculture Cooperative Food Hub on November 1st. So you can learn more if you take a bite tonight, but you can learn more in person next month. So just want to share that, and we'll also include that in our follow-up as well. Janine, Carlton, anything else to add before we pass it off?
No, sounds good.
Okay, great. Emilio, it is all yours.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much. Let me see what I can do here. Let's try no content. All right. Sorry, I'm navigating my new little laptop thing. All right, can everyone see and hear?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. So my colleague Ursula Kirk will also be joining very soon, and she is really the operations manager of everything we're doing these days. I have increasingly become the person who's chasing down funds and getting on the phone with Janine so we can yell in vehement agreement about policy stuff. So some of the operation stuff has been shifting, and some of the nuances of it, Ursula is best to speak about. So when we get to Q&A, we can talk about that. But I think I can start by giving you a little of just our own story. I'm really happy to be here, honored to be here. Actually, it's really cool that you guys consider what we're doing successful and something you can learn from. So I appreciate that. I hope that's the case. We're also learning all the time. So let's see. Okay, so here's a little bit of an agenda for tonight, and I think I'm gonna mostly run through these slides. If Ursula comes on and she wants to jump in anywhere, I kind of had her in the middle, but we'll just shake things up a little bit and she can do most of the Q&A. And if there's something on here that you don't see and want to ask me about, you certainly can. Okay, so my name's Emilio. I'm an Essex County kid. I was born in New York and I grew up in Maplewood, New Jersey. I live in Newark now, the last 10 years, and I've been working there quite a while, 15 years or more. So I'm an urban planner. I'm not an agriculturalist. I'm not a farmer. I actually came out of Rutgers Blaustein School, very focused on affordable housing and integrated communities. So that's kind of sort of like sort of the work I was doing in or that I meant to do, I guess. And then I started doing some urban garden stuff as a sort of a side project. A business partner of mine, we were working for a multi-faith organization that wanted to build more community gardens as a way to build neighborhood cohesion, which, I don't have to tell people on this call, community gardens create this great sense of community and allow people to get to know each other and overcome their differences and different barriers that maybe blocking their community. So I kind of come to this from that lens of like food really does bring people together and it's a social cohesion tool, right? But very quickly, I sort of got roped into continuing on with this garden project, even though I thought I wasn't going to do it very long. And it became from an educational garden to a little bit more of a productive urban farm on about still less than a half an acre total. But we had a church lot and we had another adopt a lot around the corner. Um, I got into distribution the first time by just like trying to give food away, like many people, probably do when they start up, and then having pop-up farm stands. And I think that's really important because I mean, I'm not a farmer like some of the people on this call, but I did get a lot of hands-on sort of trial and error experience of like how difficult it is not only to balance even a small production and then also trying to do sales and trying to do community outreach and especially in an urban food desert, trying to teach people why food is so important, right? And like kind of overcome some of those some of those barriers in food desert communities. So I feel like I have at least a taste of how difficult balancing all that is. And when I started making more partnerships in the community, it was first with other urban farmers, and then very quickly saw that they were having a lot of the same issues. We very early on had a working group that Janine, it kind of predates like all of the groups that now, like Newark Community Food System. It was called Newark Urban Ag Alliance. And it was just literally like FDC, right? It was just like working meetings that came together for people to talk about their urban farms in Newark and the surrounding towns and what kind of challenges we were facing together. And then a little bit of like, how did we want to talk to City Hall in a joint way? So there's a lot of sort of community organizing that kind of was part of the early days. At the same time, really learning the ins and outs of a farmer's market and which many folks on this call I'm sure know, all the risk factors that you take on, all the supply chain and cold chain issues that you have to deal with and staffing and just realizing around, those middle years of doing this that my niche was not really going to be in production. It was more going to be in logistics and representing sales for other growers. I thought I just realized pretty quickly that I could make more impact there, and nobody had the time or trucking or sort of wherewithal to like search out good markets and then to stand there all day and do the selling. So I kind of cut my teeth on farmers markets. Fast forwarding to the pandemic, right, which is like sort of I'm sure was pivotal for everybody in different ways. For us, it was pivotal in that we learned about the farm to families model, right? We learned about pre-ordering. We actually learned that from some of our farmers in West Jersey. The first time I've ever heard of something like local line, right? It was like from a farmer who's pretty savvy, and he was like, you guys should really try this to manage like multiple farms, and we're having some success with this even during COVID. So once we kind of started taking the farm and the market to people, I realized that like that was what I could really build an organization and an enterprise on. We don't have some of the same, I guess, geographic challenges that South Jersey has in terms of being spread out from customers, but we still have transportation challenges in our city here and in the surrounding towns of like just how difficult it is for people to move around. And still to this day, the idea of people coming to a central market in Newark would require a ton of work and investment that just has not, that ground has not been laid. So during those COVID years, we really like not only like leaned into the farm to families model and the sort of wholesale out, B2B kind of model, but we sort of had wanted to do that anyway, right? We wanted to bring our products and our farmers to customers anyway for just like a variety of challenges that we were facing. And then of course the last photo here is my lovely colleague Ursula, who's now on. And this is, the last few years have been an opportunity, as many of you guys know, with USDA funding, with sort of a different a different approach under the infrastructure funding and the Biden administration, and a look at the food system from healthcare partners and similar foundations. We finally kind of got the investments that we needed to really build a team and build some capacity and get a proper warehouse and start moving in a direction of being able to be a real aggregator. So I just wanted to give a little bit of my background and my arc, because it's not the same as like, I mean, I did start as an urban farmer, but it's not the same, I think, as some, starting with a collection of like long established farms. But some of the themes are the same. And for us, we are still supporting some retail market activities, but a lot of our business now has just, as Ursula will highlight tonight, has just really turned into B2B, wholesale, lots of curated farm to families boxes, and really helping our urban partners, whether they're like education, medical, or nonprofit organization, helping to curate the experience for them and connect them to the kinds of products that they sometimes don't even know that they need. So it's kind of a fascinating kind of linkage that we have found ourselves in.
And Emilio, I know a little bit later you're going to talk about something I know like Carlton especially will be interested in, and that's like how like the sort of evolution of you and Ursula having like realizing either you realizing it and going after it, or it's just kind of organically happening, of like developing these market relationships with institutional partners like
Yeah.
New York Beth Israel and other opportunities that have come along,
Yeah.
like with New York schools, etc.
Yeah, and I'm going to get to that in some detail, because that's and I think I have a slide that's not in this presentation, but sort of like laying out, mapping out the different kinds of ways that you can pay for food, right? And especially in communities with low resource individuals. And it comes down to a series of a few choices, and you either find ways to work with a very robust FNS benefit package, right? And like really focus in on like a model like Karen Moskowitz has, right? Where people are paying for their CSA with SNAP, and you're really focused in on that. And or you find institutional backers that can help you. Or you make a choice to go out onto sort of more like the private, more affluent market with your goods. All of those cases, I mean, for our organization, we are very squarely focused on lower resource individuals and getting the food to institutions that essentially feed mostly low income and moderate income people. We do from time to time sell some food or broker some relationships to people that have some more purchasing power. So that may or may not apply, but I think that's one of our constraints that I'll talk about, and why I think institutional purchasing is so important to us. This slide just goes over like the way I kind of look at some of the pros and cons, and these aren't like ranked in any kind of way, but like Ursula and I talk about this all the time. Like we love farmers markets. Ursula comes from the farmers market world. Like we love the engagement. We love sort of the teaching and like the things that happen at farmers markets, but we also know about a lot of the difficult risk and workload, and we find that very hard to scale in our community. So for us, again, most of our energies, because we can only pick and choose to do so much, right, with our limited time and resources, most of our stuff has focused on trying to get to scale with more B2B, more family box program, more pre-ordering, and what we've been talking about a lot, which is curating, curating the right products that people sort of want or fit the needs of their population cohort. So co-packing. So
Can I,
one
can
of
I
the
just
things
ask you a
yes.
question, going back to
Sure.
the prior
Sure.
slide?
Sure.
When
How
you,
do I go back?
oh, wrong
Yeah,
direction.
this way. There we go.
Here we go. So curation
Yeah.
means, I take it, tailored product collection, transportation, delivery for given customers. And
Yeah.
does that, in this case, are you talking about both families and institutional buyers, that you're doing both of those things?
Yeah.
Okay.
And oftentimes, and Ursula can give you some examples, but oftentimes we'll have a partner who's in the like we'll have a partner who calls us for to feed 40 families in one of their cancer prevention programs, and they sort of we provide sort of lists of what's available and like what we think would we get some parameters, right? We get parameters. What are the size families? What are they? Do you have any feedback on what's culturally appropriate for them, what they're looking for? If not, we just go through a process of sort of basing it on what's seasonally available, what we know we can get into those price points that satisfy the client, and then we sort of take it from there with a little bit of a feedback process. And some of our long-standing clients that are buying boxes or wholesale from us on a weekly or bi-weekly basis, over time we get like feedback like, hey, let's turn off eggs for a while, or let's increase the amount of fruit, or let's increase the amount of fresh leafy greens, because that's what we're hearing from folks. So there's that level of like, and it's usually with a point person or a champion who's helping curate this purchase for several families.
Mhm. Okay, cool, thanks.
And that takes a lot of Ursula's time, which she can tell you about.
I can imagine.
So let me just go through, and then I'm going to let Ursula jump in for just her general thoughts and some stories and Q&A as well. But co-packing is something that we're proud of. Look, a lot of organizations do this. Everything that we do, we've basically learned from other organizations like Common Market, or just like looking around the country, even at like what was happening during COVID. But I'm proud to say that our team has like also found lots of efficiencies and like lots of ways that it works really well for our city and for our farmers, that you can only find over time, like everything from customizing the types of boxes we use to, understanding like when certain orders are best put into bags for people like you see here, because bags are going to work better for the end user. To just figuring out mechanisms of like timing and how to keep food fresh when we don't have refrigerated trucks, which we almost always don't have, right? So our team spends a lot of time on these processes. I will say that even before Ursula started, and even through how busy we've gotten, like many of these things have not been completely codified into SOPs, but we are working on that. We're trying to make ourselves like more internal. That's one of the big projects we're working on now, is like make ourselves more internal manuals about how all this stuff works, onboarding materials, food safety and traceability things that we're like basically like gleaning and getting from other organizations and other resources that are out there, and then modifying to fit what we're doing and how our chain works. I'll also add that we really don't hold food very long. Like our refrigeration has always been pretty limited, and our space overall has been limited. So we have basically come upon this model of like, we'll order food that comes in Monday, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays for the most part, and we're packing boxes and wholesale out on Tuesday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays and Fridays. So most of the food that comes in is gone within the same week. And most things that are packed in Farm to Families boxes are out of our hands on the same day. Like that's what we aspire to. We really don't want to pack and hold things. And I see a hand up.
I hope I'm not
Rachel?
jumping ahead. Yes, I hope I'm not jumping ahead, Emilio. But I'm
No problem.
curious. I mean, you guys just have a wealth of like data and communication piece. Like, what platforms can you share? Like, are you using, or how are orders coming in, and like, can you share anything about your technology that you're using or lack
Yeah.
thereof?
Yeah, well, I would say lack thereof. I mean, we're very adept at managing most of our stuff with just spreadsheets. Although we have used in the past both local line, the grocerist, we have used for a certain retail orders. And we're still not fully settled on what the best, either off the shelf or more customized solution is best for us. But Ursula can walk you more through that. We're typically taking a lot of orders right now through a combination of email, phone, and then we're sorting them into just standard sheets that we're keeping. We did have for those of you who are familiar with Local Line, we did have like a really positive call with them recently where they walked us through all of their new features that are specifically for food hubs. And so we're kind of planning a parallel timeline of like, okay, if we decide to onboard this new system and try to get more of our farmers to use it so they can actually just upload their data right to us, then what does that look like? How long is it going to take to get there? How much hand holding will we have to do for certain growers? And could we kind of work on that in parallel and then launch it at a certain time in 2026? Because I do think we're hitting a point where we're getting so many orders, like happily, we're getting so many orders and so many like little changes and things that happen that I think we do need software. So I can't really like fully endorse a platform right now, but from what I've seen so far from Local Lines, like new food hub tools, it's pretty responsive. Yeah. So yeah. So but I think there's a lot to be said for doing things very elegantly and simply. And if that means just we use you don't have pictures here, but we use a lot of whiteboards. So like our whole warehouse team is very getting into systematic, like, okay, here's the orders for the day, here's the times they have to go out, here's the items for the box. And of course, that requires Ursula's oversight and our assistant manager's oversight as well. But we've been doing a lot, keeping it pretty simple and low tech. I don't know if that's good or bad, but that's just how we've been doing it. Um, so I'll just rattle off a few more slides and then I'm gonna just stop and let people jump in. We are spending a ton of money on bringing food from outside the city into the city, and then we're also spending a decent chunk of money on moving it from our warehouse to the last mile to the end user. We are not doing any like single retail delivery for like households or anything like that. We are delivering like large quantities of farm to family boxes or larger wholesale quantities directly to like medical partners or to a school where like multiple families pick up their farm to families box, right? Or a nonprofit organization that has, maybe 40 people in a program or more. But even still, right? Like trucking is a big piece of what we do. It's a value proposition that I think we offer to our growers that they really love. Ursula will touch on that as well. We are sending some very experienced third-party drivers that now have been working with us for 2 or 3 years, some of them. And they're very familiar with our farmers. They're familiar with our routes. They're mostly familiar with our customers. And they're pretty adept now in they mostly just have a fleet of Sprinter vans and sometimes a box truck. And they're pretty adept now in handling farm produce and understanding like some of the ins and outs of that. I think that there's probably some cost savings for us doing more of our own delivery, and we do have this back and forth conversation sometimes about what would it be like to own more of our own fleet of vehicles. But honestly, like I don't need another thing that keeps me up at night, and we already have enough of those things. And if there's any cost savings, like spending a little bit more to have somebody else manage all the trucking has been the right move for us. It's just not, we still have to put in several hours into communication and interfacing with the farmers and with the truckers. So it's not like it's completely off our plate, but the more that our same drivers and our same third-party company gets familiar with what we're doing, I think the easier it is. And we still run into some bumps in the road, but this kind of leads me into my next part of the presentation, which is that like our whole model is based on subsidy. Probably not surprising, but I don't want to overgeneralize. I don't know how a food hub that has the constraints that we have, which are on top here, right, can operate without some form of subsidy. Like I don't know how it's possible, but then again, I'm not, there maybe there's some genius that's figured it out. For us, if we want to be true to fair farm prices, and we also want to keep prices really affordable in our community, and we can talk about what that means, but typically like a lot of our farmer friendly boxes have like a 25 to 30% margin added on, which is mostly already eaten up by the time we deal with packaging and packing labor, like it's gone. So, and also maintaining good salaries for people, like to do all those things and to be true to those values as a nonprofit organization, like we have to rely on subsidy. And so the reason we've grown in the last few years is through investments in like USDA, like specialty crop and programs like that we can get reimbursed for some staffing and transportation costs. And then a major thing in especially in our community, given all of the realities of like how hard it is for low resource individuals to make the behavior change and purchase our food, we have some major donors and corporate partners, and private sector foundations who we have sort of beaten their door down for several years and said, like, you have to help us. Basically, you have to purchase food on behalf of people. And so for example, our entire schools partnership with RWJ Barnabas Health right now, where there's a nutrition curriculum for 10 weeks and there's 10 weeks of food boxes for the third grade families that are in that program, is entirely subsidized by Novo Nordisk Foundation, right? So those families are not paying for that food. And built into the cost of those boxes is some of our overhead. So when we look at when you guys were saying earlier, like, you guys are a successful model. I mean, yeah, yes and no. I mean, what is success, right? Like we're a nonprofit model. Like we break even or lose money on a lot of what we do, and we rely on charitable foundations as well as government grants to make that work. But I think I don't say that with any sense of shame or anything. Like that's just our model, and that's what I think works in order to keep the three values on top constant. Now, are there ways we can get more efficient? Are there ways we could probably lower our operating costs? And are there ways we can slightly raise our revenues? Sure. Like there's always tweaks to the model. I have some board members who are like in the corporate business world, and like that's what they want to look at all the time. They're like, hey, can I look at your spreadsheets and blah blah. And then they never follow through anyway. But the point is, there's ways to get more to like a break even or even maybe to a point of profitability. But for Ursula and I and like our organization, like our job is to pass these services through and pass the value through to farmers and pass the good food through to customers. And as long as we can get corporate and grant support to do those things, then we can operate with these values in mind. Happy to talk more about that. Happy to also eventually, like, if you want, we can even get into some more weeds about budget and what some of the numbers look like. But I just wanted to give you that top line sort of statement.
I'd say I really
Yeah, go
appreciate
ahead.
I really appreciate your doing that,
Yeah.
because that is obviously a really core challenge. And given that no funder is forever,
Yeah.
we're always hustling for new sources. And so that is something I hope we can return to talk about a little bit more.
Yeah, and I'll say, so here are some of our major partners in the last couple of years, right? And RWJ Barnabas in particular, it's a mixed bag with any of these corporate partners, but they've been extremely generous, and I think they've been forward thinking from their social impact team on how they can invest in like food pharmacies for where they prescribe food to people or it's actually prescription light, but where their dietitians can give food out to people that are food insecure. They've been forward thinking in building greenhouses and gardens around some of their hospitals and building farmers markets. And so that's actually how I got connected to them, was actually through the Newark Beth Israel farmers market first and foremost. But our partnership has evolved into them investing both in purchasing food from us on one line, and on another budget line, helping us with building our new facility, which I'm happy to talk about too, because we're going to be moving into a new food hub facility next year. based on state appropriations that they were able to acquire, right? But with a lot of our guidance and us as a thought partner. You know, and especially Carlton, in light of your comments when we started, right? Like the government shut down. So here we are, and like we just had this era for like 3 or 4 years where USDA was like injecting money into these local food systems and into the kind of model that I've been talking about. And yet we've kind of seen the writing on the wall for the last, even before Trump was elected, right? That like some of these big corporate players in New Jersey also have a huge role to play because they can sort of, in a lot more general way and sort of in many ways without as much red tape, they can make some very targeted investments. And so the next 3 years of what we're trying to do in Newark is going to definitely rely on us pulling in partners like the Newark Alliance, which represent like the 16 or 17 biggest companies in Newark, including the Devils, including Prudential, including Audible and Rutgers, and trying to have specific targeted conversations with them about following RWJ's lead, following Novo Nordisk's lead, and like again, you can invest in us by taking off a whole line item of equipment or supplies or things we need, or helping us with staff and overhead. Or you can just commit to a huge purchasing agreement where you're going to buy food or sponsor farmers markets or in some way, support the consumer on that end. And both help us a lot and both give us predictability and the ability to forecast the future a little bit. So, I again, there may be other ways to do it, but in the world we're in now, where most of the money for our food system, if we want to change it, is tied up in either government or corporations. That my opinion and my experience has been, we have to knock on these doors and we have to ask these folks to, and we have to be ready and have shovel-ready ideas for them, right? Quote unquote. Like we have to have real ideas about how they can make an investment in your food hub or in your farmers or in your consumers and where they can plug in. Because subsidy is just, the model doesn't work without subsidy. Not if you're going to feed low resource people. So
yeah, I just want to say, I think that's one of the things that we kind of arrived at as a conclusion, like what Emilio just said, the model doesn't work without subsidies. Like if you're going to bring food from small, in some cases, beginner farmers to lower resource areas, like I remember the day that we kind of arrived at that conclusion together in our working group, like Alicia and Crops and Karen, it was kind of like, we need to just say that more. Like we shouldn't be hiding the fact that this requires underwriting from corporate America, who is ultimately sort of to blame for the government in corporate America. That's ultimately sort of like the historic and continuing causation of a lot of this anyway, right? Anyway, so I just wanted to highlight that I think it's really a strong point that Urban Agriculture Cooperative like makes a point of calling that out.
Yeah, and that's real, and that's like again, it's who do you want to feed and how, and do somebody's gonna have to pay along somewhere. I should say that we maybe I should have just said that out at the outset, but maybe it's an assumption. But so we everything we do is like purchased from farmers. Like we haven't asked for donations. I think there's been 1 or 2 times when we've asked people to come in at a little bit like lower than their wholesale price for like a special client or a special event. We're always passing money through our model, and in order to do that, like it's got to flow from somewhere. It's not flowing from our customers directly. So did we lose Ursula? Oh, Ursula, there you are. I wanted to give you the floor, and I'm sure people have questions, but if we go back a few slides. Ursula, I was thinking maybe you could talk a little bit about like starting with just like some of our farmers and our markets, or any stories that this kind of brings up for you, or whatever. I'm sure people want to hear from you. You're on mute though. Oh, there you go.
Okay, here you go. So first off, I kind of want to start by piggybacking off of kind of what you said as far as like the food that the people that we want to serve, and also the farmers that we want to buy from. I am so sorry. Panda, I am so sorry. I have these 2 kittens. When I'm away for a while, they just climb all over me.
I don't think anyone minds, Ursula.
Don't worry.
Keep the cat. Yeah.
So my job, well, basically, I started out working for an organic farm in Basking Ridge. So that's kind of how I got into the space. And so I oversaw all of our farmers markets and also wholesaling. So at our organic farm, we use the organic produce like the tomatoes to make an amazing like Bloody Mary mix or a marinara sauce or salsas. So I also worked with a lot of the small like mom and pop stores throughout central New Jersey specifically to sell our products. So when I first met with Emilio, I kind of already had a network of farmers and producers and stores that I knew and had worked with pretty closely with the organic farms. So I always tell people, you know, I love, loved working for the farm. And I recall thinking, how can I kind of combine this into doing something a little bigger, as far as bigger than me, and like really more so like serving a community. I'm so when I met Emilio, it was kind of like kids. It was like, wow, it was just amazing. It was like an amazing match because my initial passion was for the farmers and supporting these small farmers because the farm I used to work for 4 years, they went out of business and he was a younger farmer. It's a really, really tough business. And so coming into this work and with our focus on mid-sized and small farmers, like that was really exciting to me. That combined with, again, focusing on providing this produce for people with of lesser means and people at farmers markets in Bedminster, Montclair, and Summit. So one thing I will say, and some of the challenges that we've faced as a smaller nonprofit working with small and mid-sized growers is, like you mentioned, transportation is a huge cost. Our small farmers, it's been such a lifeline for them because they're the same ones who have the produce to kind of scale up to a certain extent, but they don't have the means of getting it to certain places. And we provide that for them with our transportation. Also, as far as like additional labor. So again, a lot of these small farms, they may just have 2 or 3 people who work on the farm, typically they're family farms. And so they wouldn't have the labor to say weigh out mushrooms at a half a pound to sell by the pint. So but we take on that labor, and that's a huge help for them as well. So there's definitely it's something very, of course, it's part of our mission. It's very gratifying when you think about just as far as how it makes you feel to support these small and mid-sized farms. And at the same time though, it's part of who we are, and I think that we are the organization and we have the size where it makes sense, to support the mid, small, and small farmers because we're not there for the big guys. They have outlets by way of, shop rights and things like that. So, but yeah, so my job essentially is to work with the farmers, sourcing the produce, curating the box contents. One thing I will say too about the slides from earlier around the education piece, a lot of our clients are looking for fresh produce, but are not, kind of unaware of the idea of like a seasonality component. So it's not uncommon to get requests for peaches in January. Or it's not uncommon for people to say, hey, Ursula, I love the boxes, but we're only getting apples. And so it's like the education piece goes there. In addition to also, we include these one-page inserts with where everything's coming from. It's important, again, to bring attention to these local farms and also to like a suggested recipe, which I shamelessly steal off the internet because I'm not a cook or a chef. So, but yeah, and that's my job, and it takes me. I feel like a broker. My farmers would text me at like 6 a.m. in the morning. Usually, it's something along the lines of either some crop has gone to seed and they can't sell it to me anymore, or Ursula, I have a bumper crop I need a home for. Can you help me? So I feel like a broker in a way, and it just requires like a lot of back and forth. And Amelia mentioned too how we're trying to get certain systems in place. But what I will say about my working with UAC these last going on 5 years, farmers are so relationship oriented. It's so important to them. And there's definitely, when it comes to farmers who are not wholesalers, which is who we deal with, they rely on the trust that you build with them. And they rely on the fact that you're going to pay them what their produce is worth. So a lot of my farmers, they can't compete with the wages that some of these big guys are getting for like a bushel of apples for like $12. They can't compete with that. So right now, it is a lot of texting, a lot of emailing, a lot of phone calls, a lot of just farm visits because that's something very important to them. And like what I love right now about the network of farms that we have is at this point in our working with them, they now prioritize a lot of their product for UAC. And part of it really is because of their relationship with us. And we mean a lot to them, and they mean like so much to us as well. And they feel that. And that's honestly why I think we even were able to get to the point we've gotten to because of those relationships. Now, of course, eventually that's not sustainable, obviously. And I tell Emilio all the time, like I genuinely believe I don't care what we put in place, local line, grocerist, I will still get a 6 a.m. text from a farmer telling me what they have or what they don't have. My drivers, they get upset because they'll get to the farm and they'll say, "Hey, Ursula, I'm here, but nobody's here." And they're not responding to my phone call. But when I call, they pick up. So, so like it's I love it about them, but it also drives me crazy that I can't be all the time around. But yeah.
Yeah, and I think that our hope right now is to maintain some of the personal touch in those relationships, but like also create, if I had to go back, I would create a little bit more firm systems with some of our growers and our customers too, that were like, we just didn't know at the time that having like some better expectations up front would make it easier to work with them, right? And not take it. But you know, it's a trade-off. Like you want to keep people happy. So maybe that says something about, you know, not getting too big, right? And not working with too many growers. Otherwise it overwhelms you. I think we're up to like over, was it 35 last year, Ursula? Almost like 35 different growers. So it's getting big. And that means if you're going to do it with that personal touch, you know, that's just something you have to factor in.
Yeah. And they stubbornly insist on taking only paper checks, some of them. Like they're just really I mean, they're
But
my
that's just
farmers.
how, yeah, that's you know, you have to meet them where they're at. And I think that's one of the reasons why LFPA was a challenge for a bigger institution like the food bank, because they're not used to doing that level of like meeting people where they're at with things like that. Anyway, that's my question. And Emilio, you answered part of my question. I was gonna say, can you talk a little bit about the numbers of when you started versus where you're at now with like staff, but also the number of farmers that you're working with, and like where you really saw that start to scale or grow? And what do you think some of the like turning points, pivotal sort of milestone turning points were with like onboarding and working with more farmers? And then also like for an organization like just starting out, if like let's say Pinelands Preservation Alliance or someone is going to start something similar, like what is like the core staff that needs to be in place on a regular basis versus like maybe just some days of the week?
Um,
That was a multi-part question. Sorry.
yeah, there's a
It's
lot.
obviously for both
Just
of
a
you,
light
not just for
cover. Just
not
I'll
just
just, I'll just,
for
well, I'll start by just saying that we're kind of where we're at now. So we started with essentially no paid staff and you know the ability only to like when Jamie and I founded it, I mean we weren't on salary, right? So we were just kind of supplementing ourselves with other jobs, but we were dealing with something like 20 or 25 orders a week, you know, plus some farmers markets during the year. We had enough grant money to, you know, pay some students to help us on a very part-time basis with packing and volunteers. You know, at this point, we are a staff of, you know, Ursula full-time, me full-time. We additionally, this year, we have our first marketing and communications person and another program assistant person who basically is like a catch-all of Ayushi, is just helping us with a number of different program areas because we just need more, you know, someone who can execute some tasks. And then our daily work, our weekly labor relies on three more senior assistant managers who work directly under Ursula, and then another, depending on season, another 4 or 5, you know, seasonal packers. And these are typically like college students and you know, people who kind of come in and out for little portions of the year, but some of them have been with us for a while. We try to hire in Newark. So now we have a whole little operation going. One of the things that we've piloted in the last 2 years is an apprenticeship program. So we just now onboarded some high school seniors that have trained with us for a year, and now they're actually like being stood up, 3 of them as actual packing staff, like and being treated like the other adults. So I think it's really important for us going forward is to have a pipeline of young students who can work in it, because it's very labor intensive. It's very hands-on.
yeah, it's
So
very
maybe
labor intensive, like all throughout the process, not just like certain date. Because like in the beginning, you were probably just like packing, receiving and packing out shipments or you know, deliveries. one day a week maybe, but like now is it
Yeah,
like every day of the week?
couple days a week, yeah, a couple days a week, and then we'd be at a farmer's market like a different day. Now we're what are slow. I mean, we're really heavy, like 4 days a week, plus then the rest is all administrative time and other tasks. Yeah,
Right, but we're also doing wholesale. So
yeah.
it's very different processes, you know. So it just kind of further complicates things. Especially when it's, you know, you have the same deadlines, the produce need the same day. So now there's it's not uncommon where on like a Thursday, we're not only packing 200 boxes for like a school program, but we're also, you know, we're putting together a wholesale order for two large
Janine.
clients or for two clients. Right.
Or for
So
Janine.
That was a one-time special thing for our event, and thank you.
Can you, a question I've had is the people you're trying to serve, the customers, it sounds like you're focused on the city of Newark for your customers. Is that right?
Yeah, Newark and the greater Newark area. We have one health center in Jersey City that we serve as well. Newark is just so big that like even though we get some requests to do it some other areas, like Newark is so big that we haven't even saturated what's possible there.
Mm-hmm. But the farms, the
and
growers.
also if I
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, what were you asking about the growers?
Well, that's where I was going to go next, but I carry on with what you were going to say.
So what I was going to say is also, you know, with when it comes to Newark, and again, coming from a farming background and working farmers markets, what makes Newark so vulnerable and also what makes the work so important is that we don't have the saturation of consistent farmers markets in Newark that you have in suburban areas. Like again, I always want to reference like Bedminster, Summit, Montclair.
Mhm.
You will have pop-up markets, yes. You'll have a lot of markets going around Newark here and there, but there isn't like the consistent like long-standing farmers market that people can rely on to get their fresh produce. So I saw that to say again, Newark is a very big city to Emilio's point, but again, I think the work it's not been really penetrated by farmers like it could be, considering the people are here, just because of lots of different challenges with Newark. And for example, I know a lot of farmers, you know, number one, just navigating Newark with these large pick box trucks with a bunch of produce, getting it to a park, unloading. There's all these different challenges for these suburban or rural farmers to come to Newark. So yes. So we primarily service Newark, and the need is like really significant there on both the farmer side because they do want to access the people who you need their produce, but also from the buyer side as well.
Mm-hmm. So looking at the grower side, you are working with some growers who are growing in Newark and also with suburban and rural growers?
Yes. Yeah, our
Okay.
production in Newark is very limited, even though there are a lot
Yeah.
of urban gardens. They're
There
not.
are a lot compared to say Camden, where there's hardly any.
There are a lot of projects, but they're not all productive and they're not all participating in markets, I would say.
Right.
There's a few that are kind of more oriented towards being farmers. Of those, some give away all their produce to other programs or just donation, which is fine. So there's only a few of them that, you know, certain times of year actually sell things. And this is something that you know, we had kind of hoped to address in those early days of organizing. Like there was, you know, this sort of early push to have different urban farmers focus on different products and actually like create a revenue stream. But frankly, and Janine knows this too, like Newark urban farmers go their own way in a lot of different ways. And not all of them to this day, not very many of them actually really seem to care about the selling side of it. For many of them, it's about events or education or, you know, other uses of their space. So we actually get a relatively little from Newark, and we're hoping that changes. But there are a couple other urban farms in other cities, right, Ursula, like Patterson, that we're drawing some stuff from as well.
So
Yeah, spot on.
that's
And
another area. Okay. I think we have a little bit of a delay, so we keep talking over each other.
no, I was just saying spot on.
Yeah, right. And definitely a challenge that I'm seeing now as I learn more about the situation in Camden and related, nearby towns, is that finding growers who are serious about it being part of how they're going to make their living and have the consistency and the willingness, the interest in learning the skills, both the business skills and the growing skills to make it work. That's really hard. And people start off with a lot of enthusiasm and then they kind of lose it at some point when it gets hot, in some cases. And in others, right, they're not looking to this as a way to make a living. And we kind of feel like to get a real ecosystem of urban farms going, you need to have several people who want to make a living doing this stuff. And that's definitely been a challenge.
Yeah, to hop on to Carlson's comment, I was going to ask, oh, thanks, Janine. We'll close out for you. But I was gonna ask, like, yeah, how much hand holding have you had to do in terms of like preparing a farmer to switch to wholesale, and in terms of consistency in not only availability but like products themselves? And did you create your own resources, or are there resources out there that you found really useful? I'm just curious, like, because yeah, that would be a huge foundation piece.
Yeah, Ursula,
So,
you speak to that, I think. Yeah.
like that, just so depending on the size of the farmer and again the experience level of the farmer, the level of hand holding has been it's definitely it's been pretty intense. And when I to just kind of give you some examples, it's so that there's a certain degree of um hand holding we do in general, because again, we work with a lot of farmers who are not wholesalers, so not that large. So we have to basically pretty much, communicate with them kind of how our pricing model works, how the logistics works, and how our ordering systems work, all that stuff. But for the smaller and the like less experienced farmers who are getting new into this, and to Emilio's point, who are not really sure if this is something they really want to make a money making endeavor, it can get to even more detailed, as in, because also those farmers typically don't have the resources as far as like the labor, so they will ask if they could maybe have one of us help them harvest, or they will ask if they have a basket, we have a basket for them to use for their harvest, or they want to have a washing station. And so it's been a little tricky because we want to work with a lot of these smaller farmers. At the same time, we want to make sure that we are partnering with the right organizations who can possibly be that kind of resource for them as new farmers. Because at the end of the day, speaking from what I've been doing, we don't have the bandwidth to also do that as well. But it is a balancing act, because also we're still trying to be supportive of these small farmers, but trying to figure out where that support, as far as like hand holding, where that ends, like that has been a little bit of like a fine line, to be totally honest.
Yeah, no, Ursula, totally right. We look for, right now we're trying to lean on more local partners who want to actually provide TA and, really like get out there with people. I mean, I used to do that to some extent when I was growing more and selling less. And then I realized, like, if I'm on a truck going to different people's gardens to help them turn beds or move compost around or whatever, like that's fine. And it builds a lot of relationships, and it's an investment in one way, but it took me away from building the organization. So now, and especially now, if we're trying to fulfill orders, now we have that real tension between, we just need good New Jersey product, but we'd love to bring more urban growers to the front of that line. But if they're not ready to get to the front of that line, and it's going to cost us real staff time on a very tight week and a tight deadline, like we can't always help. So we do struggle with that because we'd like to help more. But yes, we're actively trying to build more partnerships that can respond to those needs.
Cool. Yeah, it sounds like either a strong partner, or circling back to the question Janine asked of like what jobs are necessary. Maybe it is someone on staff who's like just going in and prepping
Yeah.
a farmer, like onboarding and training, which is a whole other thing. But
yeah, it would be a whole nother workflow. But
Yeah.
we've been a little limited.
That's one of the things I've been thinking about is to see if it was possible to get funding for at least 2 years, to hire someone of proven skills and entrepreneurial spirit who would serve as the sort of, the Camden farmer, the person who
Yeah.
helps people when they screw up, fills the gap, shows how, efficient small scale farming can actually generate real money. And then, sort of serve as the prototype of what other people could do if they want to pick it up and get support from, from the network. Don't know if that's feasible or not, but it might be the only way to really jumpstart some of these places, because at this point we have locations. I think there are customers. We don't have the farmers.
Uh, yeah, so
So,
maybe that
Carlton,
guides your investments in that way.
I was going to also say, I don't know if you're familiar with the Greater North Conservancy, their Plotted Fresh program. Are you guys familiar with that? So, from what I understand, and Amelia may have more information about it, they have a position working with the Greater North Conservancy where this particular person, they assist urban farmers. I don't know if that assistance is like technical support, but I do know that is a role. However, I do think it would be a more impactful role if it was an actual farmer. So I don't know,
Well,
Emilio, is that
they
did
they
I
did
get that
have
right?
Ebony Ramsey was in that kind of role for them for some years, and she was a very skilled farmer, I think. Um, but then they lost control of that parcel that they had where they had their farm. I think the city decided they wanted it back to develop, right?
Yeah, it's a high school now, or it's on the way to being a high school.
Right. No, that was a beautiful place.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a large urban farm. Yeah, no, I think there are I think there are models though of especially if you can get people to collaborate on. Ursula and I have given this advice to some growers. Focus on 3 or 4 crops, and if you
Yeah.
grow those pretty well on your urban farm, then we'll buy them from you. And then I guess a follow-up thought there is if you had that sort of rotating farmer harvester type person who can say, I will schedule to come around in my truck and help you during the busy harvest, or to
Mhm.
troubleshoot the pest problem early in the spring.
Right.
Yeah, conceivably, if you had the right organizational framework, I think for something like Camden Urban Farms, you could make that happen. I think that's possible. But that I think that needs to be the sole focus of somebody, or of a program.
Yeah.
Because you
Yeah.
can't do it. You really can't do it all. You're not going
No.
to be doing sales and doing that.
Right.
Right.
I mean, then you got, if you can have supporting that role, the marketing, the transport facilities, the storage
Right.
facilities, it makes it realistic, but it's got to be someone's real job description and passion, I think, to make it work. Yeah. Partly, and it's got to be someone who can work with people, some of whom might be easy to work with, and others might be really hard to work with.
There's also that.
You said that you also are you operating a farmer's market still yourself?
We have done some pop-up markets this year. We're not operating one on a weekly basis, but what we have done is provided a bunch of technical support to some. So help them with their SNAP payment systems. We've helped them recruit and train market managers that have worked with us before, that can step in and be experienced. We've provided wholesale to other market managers in the community so that they can go do their pop-up and have a more robust offering. So we do a lot of back end support, but we're rarely spending all day from soup to nuts, selling
Yeah.
setting up and selling by ourselves anymore.
Yeah, we're learning a bit of those challenges operating a farmer's market inside Cooper Hospital in Camden, which you would think could work out really nicely as a way to reach a range of people from, the specialist brain surgeon to the indigent patient who's there in the building. But in practice, the sales have not been as robust as we like, and almost all of the buyers have been hospital staff.
Hmm.
which wasn't exactly the population that we were aiming for, although they appreciate it.
They also need food. Yeah.
Yes.
We experienced that here too.
It's not a bad thing. It's just that we wanted to reach more people who were there as patients because, in the area.
Yeah.
So
No, that
we're
echoes
learning,
what we've
this is our
seen.
first year doing it and we're learning from it, but they're definitely, and that's one where we're just operating it ourselves, our own staff doing it.
Carlton, I would say I remain skeptical that even an on-site market in some of our New Jersey urban communities can really ever get to a point of, robust sales. Similar experience at Newark Beth Israel and a couple other great community partners who I give all the credit to because they really drove as many people out as they possibly can and they really invested in it. But short of a citywide multi-sector partnership on like a real big market that everybody in the city can go to and perhaps even have a regional draw. I don't know if that traditional sort of model is ever going to go, be more than, sort of a nice thing for the hospital folks that are there, which could be okay. But again, then you come back to, well, how do we subsidize this for the long term? Because it's not really going to be the site that a bunch of farmers are raving about as like,
No.
doing
And
really well for them.
I think we went into it knowing that we had to be the aggregator, and almost all the produce is coming just from our own farm at this point, this season. But I think you're right. You may turn out to be right. We're still working on it, but our thought was that there was enough volume walking through that lobby of the main hospital, which is where they had us set up indoors, that we would we'd succeed. The other thing Cooper did was that unfortunately they advertised it late, so we didn't get nearly as many as we could have, but they provided the opportunity for their staff to get box shares, CSA shares, which they pick up at the market. And Cooper paid us in a lump sum, but did payroll deductions for their staff. So it made it made it easier for people who were not accustomed to the CSA idea of paying a whole lot of money at the beginning.
Yes.
And I think that's got some possibilities too, all premised on the idea of serving a mix of customers with a mix of financial capacity in the hopes that you make it as affordable as possible to provide the subsidized food for those who can't afford the market rates, or, for whom that becomes a disincentive in a lot of ways.
It sounds like you have a strong partner there that, I think can give it its the best try, and I think that's important. It sort of mirrors what we're doing with and have done with RWJ.
Yeah. It sounds like similar models, or at least trying to find ways. And these hospitals are big institutions, and they're not the easy. Even when you've got really nice, enthusiastic people, they're not that easy to get through all of the process that they have.
Since we're recording, I won't say anything more about that.
Okay.
Well, and I also want to be aware of time, but Melanie Marie, without putting you on the spot too much, if you have any questions, now would be the time to ask. But if not, we can also follow up with Emilio and Ursula later.
Oh, I was just thinking that if you were trying to reach more patients, that probably a better spot to set up would be by the pharmacies, the outpatient pharmacies in the hospitals, and also the discharge area of the ER. Usually patients are waiting there for a long period of time to be discharged, and a table there catches everybody that leaves. And they could take fresh produce to go home and make dinner. That might be after a crazy ER visit, that might save them a trip to the grocery store. Or sometimes they discharge the patient to like a retail pharmacy within the hospital. I don't know if they have that there. And then you could have the spot in the pharmacy as a one-stop shop if you were trying to reach more patients over hospital staff.
No, it's an interesting idea, and that's one of the things we have for this winter, is to do debriefing with the hospital staff we work with and talk about location and setup and, flow to see if we can just get in front of more people.
Yeah,
Amelia?
because I helped connect Walgreens pharmacy with Robert Wood Johnson in New Brunswick. And I found that the best area to catch them, to take them from discharge to the pharmacy, was the discharge area of the ER.
Hmm.
So that's
That's
that might,
interesting.
and I would sit by the discharge area and wait, and like they would be like sometimes a line formed. So there's a lot of waiting in that area. So I don't know if that's
That's a really
so
interesting idea. That would not have occurred to me, but
yeah.
we'll raise that in our conversation with Cooper.
Great. Well, yeah, Emilio, Ursula, thank you so much for your time. Yeah, I think you've given us a lot of really valuable insight and appreciate your transparency. So, yeah, I guess we'll leave there. Carson, any last remarks before and we'll be reaching out as we have more questions, technical questions for you.
No, it was really helpful to hear things. I like the fact that you're not trying to purchase your own vehicles and have your own staff do the driving is a really interesting point because they're terribly expensive.
We do have one, and it's in the shop. So there
Oh
you go.
my gosh.
Plus, it needs insurance and it needs maintenance.
Mhm,
Mhm.
mhm.
But that's an interesting point. I think the way you're still clearly, as you say, sort of in a learning process about what model will work best sustainably and shifting where you've seen, what works best and being open to doing that is really important. But I think that's, we're just a few steps behind you there. We've learned less than you have. So it's really nice that you've shared your experience with us. And
Well, thanks. And
we're gonna
anyway,
talk more about the fundraising piece, the charitable piece of it.
yeah, and any way that I can also connect you guys to other counterparts in that area, in your area, that might be. I mean, I know you have good relationships with the One Health system, but if more opportunities come to your region,
Yeah.
we'll certainly be in touch about it as well. I know. I mean,
Well,
RWJ, for example, is all over the state, and I know that they're interested in replicating this model in other places as well. So
right,
maybe more
they've
opportunities
opened
for
more
farmers.
facilities down here.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, I think a big fundamental question for us is where can we fit in and be most useful to growers without trying to compete with or interfere with existing programs?
Mhm.
Where are the gaps today for a grower who doesn't have the wherewithal to create their own um, marketing system that's bringing them enough customers?
A question I always come back to too is really about balancing who you want to serve most. And so, I talked a lot about how we are constrained by both our consumers and our farmers, right? But if you guys decide that there's a whole separate market and you want to aggregate your farmers together, but then there's a whole separate market that is more affluent that you also want to serve, because that chunk of market really supports your growers, and then it allows them to do more food access work, then that's a little bit more of a blended model than we have. But I would highly encourage you to think about that as well, just from a purely like how to make it work for farmers. Like maybe
Yeah.
a major portion of their sales goes at higher price points to a different community, if you're willing to explore that, just to stabilize the growers.
I think that's
Then,
certainly where my head is.
yeah.
And, I've been impressed by the models of like some farms have had, have tiered share prices.
Yep. Yep.
And that kind of system where you're looking for the higher paying consumer to provide some of that subsidy because they help you create the capacity and
Exactly.
pay for the staff that then make it affordable to offer lower prices to consumers who can't pay as much.
Well, that's like Karen's sliding scale,
Yeah,
your
like
Ruth's
Karen
Fresh
does
Steps
that. Yeah,
Market. But also I think how UAC has made it work, like as they've explained, is that their affluent consumer are the health centers and the institutional buyers who can purchase, and
right.
then they've made their model work with the subsidies. So I think
For now, yeah, for now, and but it's it'd be nice to, I think, diversify, and we have explored like some luxury apartment buildings, for example, and done some sales work with them, and looked at the idea of like what would it look like to charge $10 more per share and do our weekly boxes there, for example, and
as
that kind
part of
of
the mix,
that
as part of like the,
underwrites what you're doing in the other community. Yeah.
yeah,
So,
as part of like the overall mix. Yeah. So you'd
mhm,
have to
mhm,
play around with like the percentage a little bit.
mhm.
Like,
Yeah.
okay, yeah.
Yeah, you could literally put spreadsheets together on that pretty quickly and say, okay, if I put 30% of my sales here, what would my margin look like versus 50% here,
Uh, I I have sort of a question. So with do you guys just focus, you don't do any higher scale like luxury? Because I feel like the hospital is the perfect model for the two-tiered um buyer, because you have, all different types of people going in and out in all different socioeconomic backgrounds. So that model probably would work very well, from the brain surgeon doctor to the, patient uh that are leaving. So I don't know.
Yeah. No, I think it's something that we especially in Essex County, like we have a huge range of incomes within 10 miles of each other, right? So like
Yeah.
we could I think Ursula and I have been thinking about if we had a sort of a dedicated salesperson or someone who understood that side of the business and could spend a little bit more of their time focusing on those markets, that's kind of like the capacity that we need to get there, because we just frankly we're so head down in just meeting the need that we have right now, which happens to mostly right now be coming from partners that are subsidizing stuff, right? So that's just where the need is now. But I would, yeah, I mean,
Because maybe if you had to focus on maybe substituting some of the subsidies, that would be a way that you'd be able
right.
to do it.
Yeah,
Because
no, I agree.
you're doing such great work. I would hate for it to, yeah.
And the food is really good quality. I mean, we're getting amazing stuff from our growers. So like I think
Yeah.
it would satisfy folks. But yeah, no, I think it's something we might, as we kind of stabilize what we're doing now and improve our systems, we might be able to do more of those kind of sales also. And then who knows, maybe in a couple of years when we talk to you guys, a percentage of our work will be, in the suburbs.